going. I'm going to hand you over now to Nick. So please put your hands together and give him a big welcome to the virtual stage.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Coming to everyone from New York. Thank you to the team for having me. Really wanted to talk to you guys today about, I think we've been joking internally of how many branding emails, emails from brands we've gotten with the word unprecedented times in it, right? But it really is. So wanted to sort of incorporate that and talk how to increase multi-channel app engagement during, during this global pandemic that we're in the midst of. So again, a little bit more about me. My name is Nick. I've been at Leanplum for just over 5 years now. And I'm a group product manager overseeing several of our product and engineering teams that own kind of a lot of our core journey building and content management experience within our, within Leanplum, which is really a multi-channel cross-platform, engagement tool. So like I said, today I kind of want to dive into, the world has been completely turned on its head in the last, 3-4 months. What's been the impact on, really the app ecosystem and the CRM and marketing ecosystem, and what does that mean? What's kind of changing for us as CRM marketers, and kind of what's happening there? And would love to hear from people as well. With any other firsthand experience. I've been talking a lot with our customers about it. And then sort of the process that, or the approach that we usually like to go through to sort of map your engagement strategy across the user journey and how we see success with that. And then really how to prioritize the mobile and email campaigns that matter, right? I think as marketers, there's a million different things we can be doing, a million different types of campaigns we can be investing time and effort into. So I'm kind of most excited today to offer sort of a prioritization framework, if you will, of how to, how we can work on the campaigns and invest in the use cases and types of campaigns that are going to add the most value. And finally, how to kind of test and experiment in the time of COVID. So just quick poll. I've never tried this feature in Zoom, so no promises. But who in the audience has actually changed their engagement strategy as a result of COVID? Maybe give just 10, 15 seconds there. Seeing good blend so far. This is kind of cool feature. See the results in real time. So sort of yes a lot and yes a bit is looking like around 50%. So really kind of split right down the middle. Interesting. And then James, I'm not sure how to end the poll. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so winning answer was yes a bit with 38, so right about 40%, and then another 15 for yes a lot. So a slight majority is there has been some modification in strategy, and then maybe some of us are feeling like we should be potentially modifying, or maybe this just COVID and the pandemic and recession just hasn't impacted our business at all, which is definitely the case for a small majority. I'd say this is pretty in line with what we see with our customers, but I think is definitely still worth taking a step back and looking at the strategy of our business, of our product decisions, and as CRM marketers, the campaigns we're running to drive those outcomes, during this time. So James, I'm not sure if you can clear this poll out. Let's see. I have to stop for a sec. Let's see. There we go. Awesome. Thanks for all the participation in that. So just to look into some stats that I thought were really interesting. These are from an Ericsson mobility report that really just came out in the past couple weeks. So really up-to-date data. And surveying across thousands of consumers, really trying to understand which activities have users found apps most critical for during COVID. And I think there's definitely some categories here on top that are a no-brainer, and we definitely expect to see. For a lot of us, our jobs are now, all services like Zoom and Slack. Everything is critical to actually doing our job, and education has been turned on its head, and all of these app businesses that are in those fitness, especially, you're seeing like a lot of interesting free trials like the Peloton 90-day free trial. So many opportunities to really turn this into an incredible growth pivotal moment for your business. And I think we were talking internally as a team as well, that some industries have, I think, like healthcare, for example, and you see potentially as much as like a 10-year acceleration in the digitization of those kind of products and services, just regulations and things that would usually take years to unpack and modernize. It really just happened overnight. So tons of opportunity for businesses to really leverage that event into success. If you look at kind of all the app categories across the ecosystem, and this graph is showing sort of a cross section of user growth in terms of number of users in apps and sort of the actual app usage. What are they doing in the app, and sort of graph that, and look up and to the right are the app categories that have experienced the most growth. So again, like remote working and e-learning, of course. Some stuff in entertainment, I think, has seen a massive spike. Social shared experiences, so things that are trying to bring us together in this in this time where I think a lot of people are craving that because we're sitting at home all day. Just across multiple categories, some really impressive growth. Really across most or all categories, except those from talking with customers that are that sell some sort of a combination of a digital plus real world product or service. So really an exciting time and an opportunity for, I think, people in our space to help drive these, use these kind of real world events and pivot those into continued success, not just a huge spike in newly acquired or organically acquired users, but figuring out how we group these users and try to retain them over time. At the same time, in a recent survey, 42% of companies say marketing budgets have been cut in the past few months, some up to as much as 70%. But of course, responsibility and workload has not decreased. It's at least stayed the same, if not increased. And really, for a lot of our customers, there was an overnight need to kind of reassess the value really your whole business is driving for customers. And we feel it's super important to constantly be testing kind of that content and the campaigns that you're running against the core KPIs to drive ROI. So my kind of big thesis in this, when we have all these potentially hundreds of different campaign ideas we could be running, I'm going to offer a model of how we can prioritize and continue to reprioritize through testing and experimentation the campaigns that are driving the most ROI for the business in a time where that matters most. So here we have like the most basic, kind of user journey that we could probably apply across businesses, right? We're acquiring a user, they enter some sort of onboarding phase, and then engagement, and we want to retain and convert them and hopefully turn them into loyal users who are telling their friends about our product, right? But I think in reality, much more often, what we see is, what I think a lot of businesses are going to get as a result of this huge cohort of users that came in with free trials during COVID, is, there's some sort of onboarding, we're trying to retain them and reactivate them, but ultimately we're going to see a churn and an uninstall. So it's really about kind of how we can plan to try to avoid this as much as possible. And I think if we look at kind of campaign management, I think unfortunately when we start talking with maybe new customers, the first instinct, and again, like I said, I think this is natural based on we're marketers and we want to the component of the business that we control is the ability to message users, right, on mobile channels, on email. So you really see we see customers trying to start from the bottom of this on the messaging layer. And when we do that, it's difficult to bring it back to or remember what are the specific outcomes we're trying to drive, and and why are we doing the campaigns that we're doing, and putting effort into the initiatives that we're doing. So instead, we try to recommend to actually start on top of sort of campaigns management and think of it first from a user definitions and user milestones kind of standpoint. So onboarding and activation and retained, et cetera, all the way through the life cycle, and really spending time defining what each of those groups means. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And defining those milestones that we're trying to reach in order to push one cohort of users into kind of the next step, and what that means from like a segmentation and an audience management standpoint. And only after we have those defined, and just as importantly aligned, right? If you look at this page, we think of it through a specific lens, but based on whatever our role is in marketing. But really, in order to drive this user outcome, there's multiple components of the business, multiple teams, in any company that are involved in this, from user acquisition to CRM and product, and potentially even engineering to pipe the data into the systems to make this all work. So really starting from the top down and having alignment across what is the definition of our users and what outcomes are we trying to drive along the user journey. And only from there should we then, after we have that alignment, work our way into sort of the campaigns layer. What is our engagement strategy, really, mapping the user journey, and ultimately the kind of in-app experience and the messaging components that make up that ultimate strategy. And how do we do this? I think it sounds potentially a bit stereotypical, but you really do have to start at the user. If we're trying to prioritize on the ROI that our campaigns are driving, and really the ROI for our business, then we need to be driving value for the user from a product standpoint and from an engagement and CRM standpoint. And a lot of this is about having the right tools in place, the right data accessible and available to be able to target and trigger and kind of cohort your users into like I mentioned, these sort of user definitions or user groups that exist at different points in the life cycle. So that's kind of, I think, where we like to start is trying to, let's build as complete of a central unified user profile on a user. And that's going to allow us to, create these definitions and set us up for success in the future. And if you look at it from, kind of the marketer's perspective, or what's important to a marketer, again, I think we tend to focus in on this kind of middle layer of the pyramid of needs, the use layer or the engagement layer, which is really, again, about what sort of CRM campaigns can we run? What kind of journeys or blast or scheduled or triggered automations can we do to drive these outcomes? But actually, when we see customers that actually start more at the access layer or the bottom of the pyramid, and again, this is the layer of the pyramid that is about getting the right data into whatever your engagement tool is to have that central user profile, the segmentation and audience management capabilities to be able to create different groups of users. That is really where it's important to start, and pulling in other, enriching with other data sources and creating these kind of complex audiences. If we're able to tackle that layer before we just start setting up campaigns, and certainly before we start trying to analyze results and optimize and A/B test, that's typically the order of operations that we see, the most success with our customers. So just kind of quickly to jump through how we go about defining, users. I think it's really, we have a few templates that we often use. I think it's really important to explicitly state these, right? So we of course have acquired, onboarded, activated, retained, converted, et cetera. I'm sure there's different words internally at different companies for them. But I think a lot of times when I'm talking to a customer about this, it's like, okay, what does an activated user mean? It's like, well, it's, they use our app, it's active, it's so an effort to make it more explicit often, or almost translate it into a language that could be put into a segmentation tool. And a lot of this is a degree of guesswork, to be sort of educated guesswork to begin with. But in the case of onboarded, for example, this is a user who used the app for X minutes, or did events X, Y, and Z in the first 7 days or in the first 30 days, right? We all have these internal definitions, which I think are common across a lot of businesses, but really understanding what those are for each of these groups of users along the different milestones is really critical. Again, trying to start from the top and work our way down. In the case of a retained user, trying to just dive in. And again, part of this is, like I said, educated guesswork and saying, okay, so we have a group of retained users, they come back to our app. Let's try to think creatively about how could we go a degree further? How could we segment that group of retained users into two separate groups? So maybe we have power users and we have hesitant users. Power users who, are users who completed complete watch of a show, or read 7 articles in the last 30 days, right? We can be flexible with these definitions, but just trying to make them explicit, I think just allows us to kind of have that North Star, or that guiding light. And we can, as we learn more, we can, test those assumptions and shift the definition of these user groups. But kind of starting from that point has proven to be important. So from a defining milestones standpoint, again, let's start at the user. Let's try to understand those personas and what's important to them, and clearly set those user definitions, and really get alignment on those across the different cross-functional teams as early as possible. And if we are rethinking our engagement strategy as a result of global events or whatever else, kind of aligning on that before we start sending out campaigns really, I think is the first step. And only then can we really start thinking about creating a seamless experience for our users. Like we said, if we're just sending out random campaigns to drive particular outcomes along the journey, we could be driving an increase in onboarded or activated users, but potentially their retention is decreasing. Their day 30 retention is suffering over time if we're over messaging them up front. So we want to always kind of keep that back of mind, and making sure we're kind of creating a seamless experience, across the users. And this is just sort of a list of a lot of the sample for an e-commerce business, or any business selling physical or digital products. A lot of the use cases that we're typically going to see from our customers. So on one side, you have the kind of the calendar driven, or kind of these scheduled recurring campaigns, so blast promotions or weekly newsletter, these kind of things. On the other side, you have all the different sorts of triggered automated campaigns to basically drive users down the funnel, right? Either from an onboarding standpoint, conversion campaigns like cart abandonment, for example, or lots of things we can do after purchase to inspire the next purchase or engagement. But I think this can quickly become overwhelming, and in a world with limited time and even more limited resources, right now, it's important to try to get a grip on on which of these are important. And like I said, once we have our sort of user definitions and key milestones, let's see kind of how those all fit along user journey. And again, this is just a most simple sort of sample e-commerce user journey, right? We're going to typically acquire a user. We're going to, if our business is, solely mobile, then probably just download the app, or maybe we're getting them from the website and they downloaded the app. They're going to do some sort of, intent, so searching and browsing of products, and eventually, hopefully, add to cart and log in, purchase, and then next purchase, next step. Of course, this could go a million different ways and probably has a million different branches, right? Depending on the complexities of your business. Maybe users are required to log in before they can proceed in the app, or any other sort of thing. But trying to map this, and again, understand how those user groups that we've defined are moving across the average user journey. And then trying to see, okay, where are the different campaigns, CRM campaigns across email or push or other channels that are going to drive the most value and help us push those users to the next step. And here's just a quick few other examples of different types of business models or monetization models, and how the user journey can differ across those, right? If we look at a subscription based company, which is very similar to e-commerce, we see a lot of those. So something like, Spotify or Netflix, or anyone selling, content on a recurring subscription basis. Same thing, right? We're going to acquire a user, install the app. There's going to be some sort of potentially freemium experience where we're offering them free content or sort of a subset of features. And there's some unique campaigns that we can run there, from potentially like a premium upgrade or a paywall abandon sort of CRM campaign, trying to drive them to log in or create an account or start a free trial, and then ultimately consume that premium content or feature set and continue to drive engagement of that to retain that user over time. And really the only other kind of monetization model, if you're not selling products, the only other way really to make money, products or services, the only other way to make money is, sort of ad supported. So we were really trying to drive as much engagement as possible to be able to, provide a great user experience, but still be able to monetize that with some form of ads, right? So very similar, a lot of the same steps, but really trying to constantly ensure it's as easy as possible for that user to generate content. But a lot of use case overlap across these three types of different monetization models when you look at the user journey. So again, I think that's a lot to consume. There's a lot of different campaigns and use cases that we can be running and will drive real value for our users and our business. But we don't have unlimited marketing resources, right? So how do we prioritize sort of the mobile and email campaigns that matter, the most? And remember, we kind of defined mattering the most as driving the most ROI. We want to optimize for ROI. So this was a piece of analysis that we did. And if you kind of look at the average value of automation campaigns that automation campaigns within Leapom are driving relative to a cart abandonment campaign, you can see that actually the farther down the conversion funnel that the kind of campaign is looking to push the user, the higher the ROI is going to be. So potentially a slightly smaller subset of users from higher up in the funnel. But I think we so often get customers asking, there's just so many different places to start, where we just barely got the right data to be able to start, really doing some complex personalization and different types of orchestrated multi-channel cross-platform campaigns. So the way I usually like to recommend people, form their strategy is, again, starting from the bottom of the funnel, conversion funnel, and trying to get a success there. Trying to set up a cart abandonment campaign, or an article or show abandonment campaign, and making that a success story. And then once you can kind of stamp those out, start working your way up further up the funnel. So maybe we're doing a category search abandonment or product abandonment, or different post-purchase activities that aren't going to be as close to that point of kind of conversion in the funnel. So if we're able to kind of measure and understand the true impact that our campaigns are running, that really gives us a great way to be able to kind of prioritize, deprioritize different campaigns that we're working on, different messaging strategies, and really allow us to stay focused when resources may, sort of be strapped. And when we talk about A/B testing and optimization, I think it's usually important to kind of split up what we mean by optimization versus experimentation. So I think of optimization as, we have a campaign or even a single message running like this, we have a cart abandonment push notification on the left here. And right now it's not personalized. Let's add the user's first name and make this a little bit, feel a little bit more personalized, like this brand or kind of, knows me a bit more. And that's like a simple tweak that, almost always is going to make sense. And that I think of as an optimization, whereas experimentation, on the other hand, is, again, requires us to sort of take a step back and look at our whole engagement strategy as a whole, and create new hypotheses on, could we be viewing this group of users a different way? Should we take a day and do a user journey mapping exercise, or a user persona sort of analysis exercise to try to say, could we rethink our campaign strategy and sort of A/B test take a group of users and A/B test them, against our existing one versus something new and really experimental. So I think optimization can have some quick wins, and it's definitely much simpler to execute on. But I think of true experimentation as really coming up with new hypotheses about our users and about our business, and just being willing to test those and validate those assumptions constantly. Right. And really, I think when you look at it, it's like we said, like starting with the user segment and defining that user, building that into a set of prioritized campaigns and across different channels, emails, in-app, push, etc., and constantly making sure that we're aligning different business units across marketing and product and whoever else on kind of the true impact or ROI that each of these campaigns are driving, right? And having campaign results to make that easily interpretable. So really, like when we look at kind of trying to build this engagement strategy or rethink it in sort of an unprecedented time, I think of it again as defining your user base and aligning teams internally, gaining a common understanding of that user journey, and then just testing, optimizing to prioritize and reprioritize on ROI. So thank you, everyone. Hope enjoyed it, and would love to take any questions.
Great. Well, yeah, if you've got any questions, you can leave them in the Q&A box and we'll take them now. And in the meantime, if anyone says, quite a lot to go through there. One question, Nick, is, I guess if people want to get in touch afterwards, they've obviously find you at Lean Plum. We've got a little page there, and that's probably a good way to get in touch. I have a question, which is, in terms of, you mentioned at the beginning, getting this in place and understanding the different types of users and the process you need to take them down. When you're working with different types of apps, what's typical level of sophistication that you find? Is it generally, people are absolutely in the really early stages of this, or are you finding that, yes, some maybe games clients or e-commerce clients are incredibly sophisticated and
Yeah.
others aren't? Yeah. What's the sort of state of the nation in terms of app engagement?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I think, and we often look at our customers in that's one way we'll segment our customers is look at the groups of sort of um, millennial versus non-millennial customers. And I think categories like you mentioned, like gaming, tends to be arguably the most advanced in having tons of different user group definitions and constantly recreating those and experimenting with those. And I think sometimes you see, maybe larger e-commerce companies that are potentially like very web centric historically, and now are just trying to shift to mobile. That will be more of a crawl, walk, learn, step by step process to really try to shift the thinking into starting from the user level and work our way down from the campaigns rather than starting at the kind of content calendar level. So it really varies across verticals.
And are people becoming more sophisticated over time, or
Yeah,
yeah?
absolutely. And I think as we see the ecosystem and more tools and make it easier to have this sort of central, unified user profile, with things like CDPs and just a lot of these modern tools, it becomes easier to segment on all kinds of different attributes and potentially even intelligently, offer, predictive segments. That could be be showing intent to be moved to the next step in the user journey. So I think it's even in the 5 years or so I've been at Leanpalm, I've seen a noticeable improvement in that.
Great. And in terms of managing this, once you've got it in place, something we've seen at App Promotion Summit is there's many more people with, say, product marketing or
Yep.
CRM in their job title. What are the sort of emerging roles in this space?
Yeah. Yeah, I think from the in terms of the user the customers that we talk to who are actually using the tool on a regular basis, who are really responsible for that sort of engagement layer, sending out push notifications and emails. CRM marketers definitely the most common one, or engagement marketer. I think we see with a lot of our customers, we see people coming from an email background, which is not surprising. Obviously, it's the kind of the oldest digital engagement channel there is. So whether that's a separate team or that person is shifting into being responsible for mobile channels as well, but we'll see a lot of sort of email marketers or push marketers, of course, growth marketers as well. So it kind of spans across as well.
Right. So some are taking the full funnel and some, yeah, we're seeing more focusing on the post-acquisition side.
Yep.
And another question I had was relating to your first, the poll. So how have you seen, what's your view on how user behavior has changed with, with the C word and the last sort of few months? People are at home more, they're out and about less.
Yep.
Have you seen any big shifts?
Yeah, well, it was really interesting kind of digging into some of these reports, and just seeing how virtually all app categories, just in terms of user growth and app usage, really are up, with the exception of, and up like 20, 30, 50, 60%. And with really the exception of those, those businesses who are selling some sort of real world, service or product that is app enabled. So definitely some challenges for those, sorts of businesses. But yeah, overall, I think it's a really kind of exciting time in a really challenging time for the world. Kind of for us, when we have a lot, like I said, a lot of these new huge spikes in users coming into apps because we have more time. We're sitting at home more. It's an opportunity to kind of, how do we figure out how to leverage the tools that we have to try to engage and retain those users.
Got it. And I suppose maybe final question to end it. Where do you see app engagement heading? Is it just about you've kind of outlined a really good process today and way of thinking about things and a really good framework, and we have all the tools and channels there already, whether that's email or
Yeah.
in-app messaging, and it's just a question of putting that in place and optimizing it, across all these different apps, and becoming more sophisticated? Or is something going to change? How's it going to evolve
I,
going
I
forward?
think, yeah, I think a lot of mobile first businesses kind of lead the way on that kind of transition. I think we'll continue to see more, like I said, non-millennial businesses or businesses that were started before 2000, potentially brick and mortar, will continue to, I feel like a lot of us have been talking about cross-channel and cross-platform and, single unified, user experience for a long time, but there's still so many brands that don't think in that way. So continuing to see that shift, and really the more brands that sort of are willing to move in that direction, it's really just a better user experience for all of us, over time as we use those products and services.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks a lot for joining us today, Nick. That was a really great presentation. And yeah, I've seen a few over the years since 2013. It's always been, app engagement beyond the install we started with, and people started getting more sophisticated. And yeah, seeing this today, like, I really feel like things have come on a huge amount, and this is really exciting area. And yeah, looking forward to talking about this much more with you guys in the future. So yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Great. All right. Thanks, everyone.